My year's definitely kicking off to a little bit of a rough start. I'm a little hungover. Let's just do it. Here are the best books I read in 2021. Not all of these books came out in 2021, but I read them for the first time last year. If you are new to my channel, thank you so much for being here. My name is Emma. I talk about books and I do reading vlogs and also English lit uni vlogs, but today is just going to be a big old ramble through the top 14 books that I read in 2021. I'm going to rank them all from my least most favorite to my most favorite. 14 is quite a random number, but I just felt like all of these were pretty much all on the same level of love that I had in my heart for them. Like, they just all cultivated that same feeling in me, and putting any more on the list didn't, just to round it out to 15, didn't feel right, because these books are like the books of the year. And then my top 3 favorites are absolutely, like, I cannot rank them at all. They're just there. They're just the top 3, so I'll get to those last, of course. But please let me know what your favorite book of the year was. Like, I am so excited. Like, I really want to know, so I can either put it on my TBR or that everyone else in the comments can get recommendations. So we've got a snowstorm to keep us company. I also have some hot chocolate right here, so let's get into it. This is like one of my favorite videos to make, like, every single year. I look forward to doing it. Before we get started, I did want to give a few honorable mentions to The God of Small Things by Aaron Roy, The Alienist by Machado de Assis, Heart of the Fae by Emma Hamm, Get a Life, Chloe Brown by Talia Hibberts, The Book of Images by Rilke, and Dune by Frank Herbert. Dune almost made it on. It almost made it on, but it didn't. But I loved Dune. Okay, so those are my honorable mentions. So coming in at number 14, we have Leave the World Behind by Rumaan Alam. I do not think this is a book for everyone, but for me, it worked. It just worked so well. This is one of the most unsettling books I've ever read. While reading this, I actually listened to the audiobook, but I wanted to throw my phone out of the window. I never wanted to touch my phone again, or I just solely wanted to use my phone to, like, teach myself valuable, practical skills, like how to survive alone in nature, or how to just prepare food and not have to look up every single thing constantly. This book made me so just scared and feel so suffocated and anxious, and like I never wanted to read the news again or have to rely on the internet or just anything like that. So basically this is set, I believe it's set on Long Island, but we have a couple and their children from New York who are going to a lovely, like, cottage to spend a week or so. It's an Airbnb on beautiful Long Island. And so they go there planning to have, like, a nice little summer vacation, just, like, relax, disconnect, and just have a great time basically with their family. But in the middle of the night, they get a knock on their door. We have this couple come in who say that they are actually the owners of the Airbnb, and there's been a terrible blackout in New York City. There's no power, everything is out, they didn't know what to do, and so they decided to just drive the very familiar path to their Airbnb, their home that they know exactly where to go to. And it's like the middle of the night, no one has any cell reception because we're in the middle of nowhere basically. It's just like it's just very secluded, very isolated. No one really knows if what anyone's saying is true or not. And so we have these two families trying to see if they believe each other, if they trust each other. No one's really sure what's going on. There's a lot of commentary about race, family, age, life, just everything like that. But then once you have those discussions going on and they start to move into the house together and occupy this space of uncertainty, we have people obsessively checking their phones, trying to get news of what is going on in the outside world. They do get cell service for like a few single minutes and I think internet or something, but they get these like news briefs that are very disturbing. One is just complete gibberish. Like, a very well-known prominent news company published this thing that was just complete gibberish. We have another one about the blackout. We have another one about like this incoming disaster. People are speculating it's like a terrorist attack. People are saying it's some climate disaster, and it's just absolutely frightening. Everyone starts to become super paranoid. They don't know what's going on. They don't want to leave this Airbnb. Really weird things start to happen. The writing as well is so it just adds to the feeling of uncertainty and unsettlingness, because the way that Rumaan Alam like describes like the children, the mother and the father of the family, and then the elderly couple who come and is their home, is just so creepy. Like, he uses his descriptions to like comment on the United States and consumption, and capitalism. For example, the mother goes to the grocery store and buys like $300 worth of groceries, and he like lists out every single thing, kind of where they came from, the extravagance of it all. And then you also have this weird commentary on like vacation and the whole Airbnb atmosphere, and the fact that people are literally paying like their middle class money to go and stay for a week at someone else's house, who is much more well off than they are. And then you can pay money to stay in this house that's better than yours. And it was just like this really weird concept, being like, okay, what the heck is this? And it just made you think about so many things. So creepy, so scary. You, the reader, are in the exact same position as the characters within. And that's just what made it for me. And it was just, it just affected me a lot. Yeah, the whole book is just like this hurtling feeling towards something. Like I said, so many terrifying things start to happen. It gets really gory, very gruesome, and it's just like a reality that feels so real, because I think we're all aware of climate disasters and any disaster or catastrophe that could go on at any point, but no one, or very few people, I think, are actively prepared for it, actively consider what they would do in that situation, especially if they are removed from literally their whole life and their whole way of knowing things. So yeah, just absolutely frightening. So that is number 14. Wow, I talked about that for so long. Number 13 is The Three Body Problem. Oh my gosh. This one was sent to me by Michael, and I had never heard about it until it appeared in my P.O. box. So thank you so much, because it made it onto this list. It was, I think, the best sci-fi I read all year long. It won the Hugo Award. This is a trilogy. I absolutely need to get my hands on the second and third book, because oh my gosh. This one as well uses its science fiction in the form of like an alien invasion kind of thing to comment on China and the world, as well as the Cultural Revolution is basically like the main thing it is kind of discussing and talking about. So we follow a bunch of different timelines, a bunch of different people, mostly scientists, in this one, and we jump back and forth from the 1970s to I think 2005, I believe. We have this video game in the book called The Three Body Problem that you can play, and you basically like log in and you're on this planet, and this planet has 3 orbiting suns, and your goal is to, of course, predict and solve the three-body problem, to predict the motion of these 3 bodies in space, because this planet in the game is facing the utmost horror of basically having to dehydrate their bodies. Like, the inhabitants of the planet have to dehydrate themselves and basically like kind of die and go unconscious when the 3 suns become way too intense, or their pathways just absolutely destroy the planet, and they go through this huge dry season. And so your job as the player in the game is to predict that for them and help them find balance, peace, know when to dehydrate themselves. Oh my god, it was just so incredible. But then we start to learn more and more about this video game and about this problem and how it relates to Earth. So during the Cultural Revolution as well, there was like this secret military base that sent signals into space to try and establish contact with, you know, aliens and extraterrestrials. And I'm not going to say too much. I do think the synopsis like spoils some things I would have rather gone into, but as you can imagine, this does have to do with extraterrestrials, and it's just, it's so good. Like, I love sci-fi books that are about actual science, but then this one just combined like those science elements, the commentary, China and the Cultural Revolution, and like that cool science fiction element of aliens, and it was fantastic, so good, loved it so much, so devastating. And then it's just like all these pieces start to click into place, and you're like, oh my god. So yes, this takes number 13. Number 12 is a book I found thrifted. This is from an author that I knew I loved because I read some of Heather Dixon's works before, but I was not really expecting this to be on my favorite books of the year list because I don't know why. I don't know, but I read it in December and I adored it. This is the Enchanted Sonata. This worked for me so well because I love winter books. I love the Nutcracker. I love Christmas books. And this was fantastic. I believe this is technically young adult, but it does read quite like young adult, which was not a problem for me at all. I thought this was absolutely charming. So in this retelling of The Nutcracker, we're following Clara Stahlbaum, who is a pianist, and the day that this book begins, she is set to give a Christmas concert of her own composition. It's also set in like 1889 or something. But when she gets home, she finds that there's a book under her Christmas tree called Clara and the Nutcracker. And she's very confused, and she starts to read, and the book feels alive to her, like she's like experiencing it all rather than just reading it. And then we learn that the book is actually real. It's set in this place called Imperia, and that is the land of the Nutcracker, where this all takes place. Eventually Clara gets taken to this land because the prince of the land is in dire need of help. There is a villain called the Musician, and what he has done is basically played a song. This is the Nutcracker, but it also has dashes of the Pied Piper, as well as Phantom of the Opera. It totally has Phantom of the Opera in it. You cannot convince me otherwise, but he has turned all the children and all the soldiers of Imperia, the whole country, into toys. This book just had everything. It had so many characters. Heather Dixon's writing is so atmospheric. Like, you can smell and taste and hear. It's just like this dream. It feels like a dream, and you have all of your senses like so paid attention to. It was wonderful. There is this wonderful like candy emporium that is also a pretty big setting in this book, which was also so magical. I just absolutely smiled the whole time going through this. Like, I couldn't wipe this stupid grin off of my face, and it was just so great this year to read like more books like this for myself, and just to like enjoy them rather than being like, oh, I have to read like a certain caliber book, or I have to read the classics or whatever. Like, this was just amazing. I gave this 5 stars, and I was just so, it was just such a wonderful companion to Christmas for me. And as well, like, I was just so thrilled that there was like this Phantom of the Opera-esque story also within the Enchanted Sonata too. And also the music, like the power of music as a character in this, and she also uses so much musical description in her language when she's telling the story, was just such a nice touch. Yeah, oh my gosh, it's just like this was everywhere I wanted to be, was in Imperia, like in the snow, in this magical candy store. Just amazing. So if you want a pick-me-up, if you want a sweet, wholesome, wonderful, snowy, magical book, definitely The Enchanted Sonata. Okay, number 11 on this list is First Love by Turgenev. This is my first Turgenev. I'd never read him before this year. This one I saw on Audible. I think it was recommended to me on Audible, and I was like, you know what? I'll pick it up. It's very short as well. First Love is quite short, but this details a bunch of people's first experience with love. And this was not what I was expecting at all. First of all, it's on here because Turgenev's writing, wonderful, beautiful, gorgeous, very poetic. It worked so well with this story. But it's on here, I think, because it just like undermined all my assumptions of what this was going to be. This felt so cool, and it gets very dark and creepy. So the book begins when all of these people are sitting down to recount their experiences of first love, and this one guy is like, wait, I have a story that can top it all. You're not going to believe this. It changed my life, all of this stuff. And I'm like, okay, here we go. This is going to be like some mushy-gushy kind of thing. But then he starts to tell the story, and it goes back into the past, and he falls in love with this woman who like everyone loves. I believe she's his neighbor in the summer when they're staying like at his summer house in the Russian countryside, and so he falls in with all these other men, all of her other suitors who come every single night, and they play games, and they compose like poetry to her. They act out scenes from plays. Like, it's just so extravagant, over the top. He becomes so infatuated with her, and his parents are like, what are you doing? Like, why are you spending so much time over there? She's just gonna ruin your life, blah blah blah. But then the way that he's narrating the story, you start to get like these weird, like uneasy feelings about her, about his family, and you're kind of getting the sense that there are more people falling in love than just the narrator. And then the book starts to hurtle towards like this path of self-discovery, of hatred. There's like almost a scene of murder. It was just, oh my gosh, it was just so good. And then the end commentary, looking back on the past and how like that first love makes you feel now, or what it taught you, or what it showed you. Phenomenal. So good. I cannot wait to read more Turgenev this year. If you know where I should go after First Love, because I think this was actually a really good introduction to him. So impressive. Let me know, because I really want to read some more of him this year. So this definitely has to be on the list. Oh, I put some almond eggnog in here. Number 10, this author was on my favorite books of last year list, 2021. No, 2020. And I'm not surprised at all that he made it on to this year's as well. I definitely wanted to read more from him this year, and I'm so glad that I picked up The Prophet by Khalil Gibran. This was so good. I'm not sure if I preferred this or The Broken Wings, which was the work that made it onto last year's list, but regardless, this was gorgeous. This was sent to me by Stefan. Thank you so much. I did get to pick this up, and I absolutely fell in love with it. Also, under the dust jacket, it is so gorgeous. Look at that. Oh, I just love the little... Okay, when I classify this, I just want to say it's poetry. It's just poetry. This is considered his masterpiece. It starts with a quote from Gibran, who says that, "I think I've never been without the Prophet since I first conceived the book back in Mount Lebanon. It seems to have been a part of me." This work of poetry and like advice and like just absolute beauty starts when we have this land and we have a prophet who is just about to leave. He's about to go off, get on his ship, and go somewhere else. And all the people come out and they're like, "No, please don't go. Like, please, before you go, at least tell us something about ourselves. Give us some advice about how to live before we go." And so he starts to give advice on absolutely every single thing, whether that's family, love, eating, drinking, praying, living, how to be with nature, how to write, how to laugh, how to raise a family. Like it just covers so many bases, and a lot of the time it's not so much what he's saying, although I just want to, like, this is mostly the way that I want to live is like what is in here, but it's not always what he's saying, but how he's saying it. It is just gorgeous. That's something I appreciated so much in The Broken Wings, which is a tragic love story. In here, it is just absolutely filled with beautiful passages of, like, it's just all about, like, peace, and love, and embracing nature, and living a good life, and just, like, mostly being one with nature, which was just so wonderful. I just want to read you some of maybe my favorite quotes. "But if you love and must needs have desires, let these be your desires. To melt and be like a running brook that sings its melody to the night. To know the pain of too much tenderness. To be wounded by your own understanding of love, and to bleed willingly and joyfully. Your joy is your sorrow unmasked, and the self-same well from which your laughter rises was oftentimes filled with your tears. Even as you have homecomings in your twilight, so has the wanderer in you, the ever-distant and alone. Your house is your larger body. It grows in the sun and sleeps in the stillness of the night, and it is not dreamless. Does not your house dream? And dreaming, leave the city for grove or hilltop. I have found that which is greater than wisdom. It is a flame spirit in you ever gathering more of itself, while you, heedless of its expansion, bewail the withering of your days. It is life in quest of life, in bodies that fear the grave." Just so good. I have no more words. It has to be on here. I just love Gibran. I want to read everything this man has ever done. Highly recommend, so this had to be on the list. Number 9. Oh, number 9. Oh man, how many books have I cried at this year? I'm not sure. I cried at this one for sure. So number 9 is The Girl Who Drank the Moon by Kelly Barnhill. I also listened to this one on audiobook. I think it is a great audiobook experience. I would definitely go for it. This one broke my little heart. I don't know. I think I was just in a place where I really needed this. I read this very early on in the year, and it has just stayed with me. This is such a cool... Okay, this book has, like, everything for me. It has such a cool atmosphere. We're mostly set in a bog, which is, like... I've never read a book set in a bog, and I loved it. We have, like, the village, who's very superstitious because they're scared of the witch who is said to live in the bog and steal your children. And so if a child is not sacrificed to her every single year, I believe, is it every year? Yeah, the people of the protectorate will basically be attacked by this witch. The witch is just this chill woman named Zan who has no interest in keeping these babies, and she's very confused why every single year this child just pops out of nowhere, and she's like, okay, well, I guess I better take this child so it doesn't die of exposure, and so she brings it beyond the bog to basically like the free cities where they're much more liberal and open-minded, and she makes sure that the child gets a wonderful family and has a great life. This year, Everything is different because the baby she takes is this girl named Luna, and on her trip, Zan accidentally feeds her moonlight, and everyone knows that moonlight is magic and makes you magic. And so Luna, this small girl, all of a sudden has all of this power and needs to be like watched and kept an eye on, and Zan tries to hide this from her. Zan's like, I can't give this baby anywhere because I messed this baby up. No one's gonna want this one. It has moonlight in its veins. And so she decides to raise it herself along with her two companions, Glurk, which is a fantastic name. Oh, I want to name something Glurk. I will name my firstborn Glurk. He is an ancient swamp monster, and this tiny little baby dragon named Furion. He's like this very anxious tiny dragon. Wonderful. Above that, the writing was gorgeous. We follow so many more people. There's so many different themes in here. Who gave me this book? I want to give you a big hug. This is a gift from Joe. Thank you so much. I absolutely needed a physical copy of this because I want to read this again and again. It's just absolutely, it's about like coming into your own. It's about family and growing up and getting rid of sometimes some bad things that you grow up with. We follow a bunch of people from the Protectorate. We follow a bunch of people from the village. We follow this woman who has been locked up in an asylum. Follow her journey. You follow Luna. Everything. Oh my god, I'm getting so emotional. There's also this volcano that everyone is quite scared of. There's so many things in this book that is threatening to erupt, and basically just everything comes together so emotionally. It was gorgeous, it was beautiful, it was strange and wonderful and magical, and it absolutely has to be on here. It just like touched my heart and grabbed it and took it out, threw it out the window. Number 8 is Nevernight by J. Kristoff. When I first joined BookTube, I think this was the book I had heard about the most, and then I believe my grandma gifted this to me for Christmas last year. Couple years ago, but I finally decided to pick up the audiobook this year. I was like hooked line and sinker. I'm on the bottom of the ocean floor with this book. Like, I think I just sat for 3 solid days listening to this whole audiobook. I loved it. It was so entertaining, and like I think that's just the gift of J. Kristoff. And J. Kristoff and Amy Kaufman, because the exact same thing happened to me when I read the Illuminae files, all 3 of them. Like, I literally am incapable of doing anything else when I start one of these books. I just have to sit there, have to listen to it. Like, it's that feeling that you kind of miss so much, I think, from childhood, when you are so invested in like the story and you're like, no, I do not want to go to bed. Please don't make me go to bed. I want to read one more chapter, or I want to watch, the rest of this movie or something, and you just can't tear yourself away from it. And when you do, like, you feel pain. And this one was no different. So this is a pretty different series from the young adult sci-fi Illuminae files, which was fantastic. Also made it to my best books of last year list. So this one is a grimdark fantasy following Mia. Her whole family is basically either killed or put away into this awful prison. We are set in basically a very Roman Empire inspired world where these awful people are in power, and they take her whole entire family away from her. When she grows up, she heads out to the Red Church, which is this fabled place that is said to be a school for assassins, where you are trained to become an assassin, and then you are given assignments. I loved this world so much. I thought it was so well written. I know this is not for everyone, but I just loved it so much. I love the footnotes. I love our narrator. Sometimes it definitely is too on the nose. Sometimes it can border into the cringe, but I think I'm someone who doesn't really cringe at very many things, and so I can kind of just embrace that and like be like, okay, I can just be okay with this. I loved Mia's companion. She also has this like shadow slash cat companion named Mr. Kindly, who is like this parasitic demon thing that is attached to her. And Mia is also Darken, or someone who can manipulate and control darkness and shadows to an extent, and also do a lot more terrifying things with them. But I just thought the plot of this, all of the characters, incredibly cool. I loved it. This book made me feel like I could drink the blood of my enemies, if I had any enemies. I cannot wait to read the rest of this. I have Dark Dawn right here. You can bet your buttons I'll be reading it this year, because this was so fantastic. I think it just gets this high up because it was so entertaining, and also the world building I loved. I loved the footnote style. I really, really, really loved the footnote style. And I loved Mia, and just, yep. So that is Nevernight. Coming in at number 7 is Anne of Green Gables by L.M. Montgomery. I'm gonna try not to talk too much about this because I will absolutely get as loquacious as Anne and just never shut the hell up. So, I also thrifted this book a very long time ago. It's one of the older editions, which I absolutely love, but I don't think I really need to say too much about Anne of Green Gables. I just think the crafting of this book is so superior. Like, the writing, the descriptions, L.M. Montgomery and nature. A match made in heaven. And like, this whole book was just full of joy, but also heartbreak. I also think I cried at this one, definitely, for sure. And I will 100% be reading more from Anne next year because I still have a long way to go with her, but absolutely fell in love with this story. If you've never heard of this Canadian treasure, oh my gosh. We follow Anne Shirley, who is an orphan, and she is adopted by an elderly brother and sister, Marilla and Matthew Cuthbert. They wanted a boy to help on the farm. There was a classic mix-up and they got Anne instead, and instead of giving her back, they absolutely fall in love with her. And she becomes this like light jewel treasure in their lives, and ends up helping them so much more than someone who could, you know, scoop some hay could. Yeah, you just follow her growing up, all the trouble she gets into. At times you're not sure if you like love her, at times you're not sure if she needs to just stop talking. It's just really a treat. You never know what you're gonna get with Anne. I can't believe this took me so long to pick up, but I finally did, and I loved it. Like, it was just unlike anything else. Like, I think if I wanted, I do want to write a novel, but I think L.M. Montgomery is so talented, so talented. Her writing, her character, like, she just makes you feel, and like this book literally like lifts you up. You feel like you are floating off of the ground, I think, for the time you're reading it, and it's just such a cool experience. So definitely had to be on here too. That is Anne of Green Gables. Coming in at number 6, I want to reread this right now. Yesterday. That is The Bloody Chamber by Angela Carter. Oh, dear great gods in heaven and hell. This was my first time getting into Angela Carter. Wow. And so I decided to do that with The Bloody Chamber, which is a collection of fairy tale retelling set in the Gothic tradition. This woman can write. This woman can write. The Bloody Chamber was definitely my favorite in this story. It's a retelling of Bluebeard. Oh my gosh, how do I even describe this? I just want to like eat this book. I want to eat it. I want to dress myself in it. I want to put it in my hair. I want to like spritz myself with the perfume in this book. Like, it's just absolutely so decadent, so luxurious, so sexy, outstanding, remarkable. It's like plush velvet. Like, that is literally what this is. Like, when you walk into an opera house that feels very gothic, there's those red plush velvet curtains. That is literally what this book is. Like, it is so incredibly lush. The imagery is just completely out of this world. The symbolism is divine. The Gothic elements are so well executed. There's so much going on in all of these stories. You could literally spend forever. And on top of that, the absolute weaving of these sentences. Oh, she is literally a real life Rumpelstiltskin. Like, she can just take our everyday language and boom, it's gold. I'm speechless. This was fantastic. I also loved The Company of Wolves. I loved The Courtship of Mr. Lion was beautiful, but The Bloody Chamber, above all. That's all I can say about this. Would definitely recommend. This was phenomenal. Where do I go from here? Please, where do I go from here? Coming down to the top 5, and so number 5, this is a book that was actually in my honorable mentions from 2020. I decided to firmly put it on here because I reread it in December. I read it for myself this year. I don't know why it wasn't on my list last year, because this is A Castle in the Clouds. I think when a book like makes you feel this much and also makes you so happy, like so happy, like you can like be crying one minute, be having the worst day ever, and then you kind of sit down and you open up A Castle in the Clouds and you start reading and you're just like, life is great. Life is so freaking great. This is amazing. I have dreams. I have things I want to do. There's magic in the world. So many things are not what they seem. And this book just gave me serotonin. It just, that feeling is unlike anything else. And so this had to be this high up. It has to be here, because when a book just comes out and like hugs you, but also fits into this place in your heart and works so well, and like pairs itself like a fine wine with so much other media that you love, it's such a great feeling. Castle in the Clouds to me feels absolutely like it's some long lost Ghibli movie. I think if Miyazaki read this, he'd be like, I'm coming out of retirement for I don't know, the third time now? Is it the third time? Would it be the third time? To direct this. I think this is gorgeous. We're following Sophie Spark, who is an intern at a castle in the clouds, which is a hotel up in the Swiss Alps. It is so remote. Everyone basically gets snowed in. It's also extremely prestigious. Lots of rich people come to stay, and so she is very dismayed to find that her job is kind of relegated to that of a babysitter. But she finds out that things are not what they seem, and so does the reader. This book is like a hotel, and every single hallway you turn down does not look like the one you were just in. You're like, where am I? I thought this was like a romance. I thought this was a mystery. I thought this was just a contemporary fun time. But then all of a sudden it turns into something else at every single turn, and for some reason it works so well. There's so many weird elements in this book. We have a forbidden cat because there's not supposed to be any animals in the hotel. But somehow there's also like this painting from hundreds of years ago of this exact same cat, because this cat looks the exact same. Yet this cat still wanders around the hotel and is conveniently never caught by the absolutely grouchy manager. We have ghost stories, we have people who appear and disappear, we have this famous Russian oligarch and his family who come and stay and have like this cursed jewel that is said to put a curse on whoever wears it, and all of a sudden Sophie is like swept into all these conspiracies, saving the hotel, because the hotel is also unfortunately going under. They don't have a lot of money left. Not that many people are coming to stay at it. We also have this group of jackdaws who she becomes friends with, and they like kind of communicate, and we have this spoiled, rotten 9-year-old child, Dawn Burkhart, who I just want to put in a snowdrift. It's just so good. Like, it's just so good. There is romance. There are so many characters, but like, you just know them. She does such a good job at just letting you know them naturally, wonderfully. This book just plays like a film in my head. The whole thing is paced so well. Like, I feel like you could just sit down and read the whole thing and like never stop. It just like plays like a movie in your head, and I will 100% be rereading this every December now as a tradition. You do have Christmas in here, but it's more set around the 12 nights. So from Christmas until January 6th, and where evil spirits are said to walk abroad and bad things are said to happen. And the hotel is such a character. I love hotels so much as well, which is why this book just... Okay, we're done. The Gush Fest is over. That was number 5. So coming down to the last 4. Alright, so number 4 on this list is Untold Night and Day by Bai Swa. I think these top 4 books are books that are extremely challenging to me to read, to figure out. They're books that all merit hundreds of rereads, so much research, a lot of care and devotion, and I know when I reread this book again, I'm gonna get so much more out of it. This book is very hard to explain. It's very hard to read, but I think some of my favorite books are the ones that are most challenging to me, because they're also the most rewarding usually. So Untold Night and Day, how am I going to talk about this? There are lots of memories we have, and there's also a lot of language we use to describe people, and there's lots of things in our past that we start to remember in different ways when we get more and more past it. And so this book starts out on a very hot and sweltering night in Seoul, in South Korea. And it basically follows this young actress, Kim, who has just finished her last shift at an audio theater for the blind. Unfortunately, the audio theater is also closing down. And so she leaves. It is so hot. Like, the heat is also such an important role in here, because it can, of course, bring on delusions. It can make you feel sick. It can bring up a whole bunch of different symptoms. You can get heat stroke. And it just feels like this, like, awful, swampy, extremely humid environment that starts to bring on all of these recollections. The nature of reality is also so different. We have so much like being discussed kind of behind the scenes, like a lot of, I think, militarization that occurs in Seoul and stuff that happened in the past. We have these cycles of repetition, but we also have this very repetitive style of describing people, and characters who you first thought were distinct people suddenly become linked to other people in this very destabilizing way. Like, this book is just completely destabilizing. I think it makes you think about your own life and also everyone else you ever see passing by. The way that when you just catch like a flicker of them, they can be kind of grafted down to this one thing. And so this like set of sentences and descriptors are used over and over again to the point where you can't tell who is who anymore. And things just start to blur and mesh together. There's also like the layers, right, of the past and the present just start to meld together. And to infringe on each other. And it's a really good, I think, representation in a really scary way of how the past does actually do that. Sometimes not in such a, I think, traumatic way, like a PTSD kind of resurfacing of the past to the present moment, and then you start to live simultaneously in both times, and you always have a foot in two different timelines. But I think just in a way that maybe you're just sitting there and you're just going through your memories. You're remembering good times, you're remembering bad times, but because you were thinking of them in the present, they do start to meld through, and in Untold Night and Day, they like literally start to come through, which is a really interesting take on it and something that is so powerful. It was just phenomenal. Like I said, it's like it's a fever dream, and I just want to read this again and again and again. So happy to have picked this up. Absolutely fell in love with this, even though it was like something you had to like kind of swim through. It was just like an out-of-body experience and so interesting. Okay guys, and then we make it to the last three. These books have like, I mean, all these books have touched me and changed me this year, but these three really, really, really are, I think, a part of me and just like glued themselves onto me. So in no particular order, okay? In no particular order. You can read into this however you want, but these are in no particular order because I couldn't pick. We have War and Peace. Of course we do. Of course we do. I think a lot of people thought this was going to be like my number one favorite, and it's up here. It is up here. But between these three, like I could not pick between them. Like I love these so much, these three. So War and Peace is definitely on here. I mean, look at this. I don't know, I just feel like I had a whole life in here, and that's what reading War and Peace feels like. It feels like you're there, it feels like you're a character, it feels like you are living in these times, especially because it's so long and you spend so much time like in this reality that Tolstoy has replicated but then filled with fiction of his own. Such an interesting style. I'm so glad I have like that series of vlogs I did with the Tolstoy Diaries. Ridiculous, amazing, so impressive. I think I also cried, definitely also shed many tears at War and Peace. If you have been intimidated by this, I would say like, just don't be, because it's just reading a word after word after word. Yes, there are a lot of pages, but Tolstoy, like, he's got you. Tolstoy's got you. You just gotta trust Tolstoy, and go with him. And it's literally like a journey. You feel exhausted. You feel like you lived 80 years in this book. So basically War and Peace follows the years of the Napoleonic Wars in Russia, and we follow, I want to say 1,000 characters. But we principally get to know people like Prince Andrei, Natasha, Pierre, Sonia. Sonia? There's Sonia on here? But there's so much philosophy. You learn basically about all the Napoleonic Wars. You get all of this meditation on like life and how do you live and why do people engage in war. But also on another level, Tolstoy is basically telling people how to write history, telling them that they haven't done it correctly, that, you know, there's not this one cause to effect ratio that is the right way to do it, because that's the wrong way. Causes that basically create everything is people. It's all these people, it's all these scenarios that happen, and you can never boil anything down to Napoleon had a cold this day, and so, you know, they lost the battle or something. And it's just this really cool study. But more than that, like the way that he writes, his characters, oh god, it just hurts so bad looking back through this. But I just also can't believe that I read this year. This is such a big achievement for me for a number of reasons. Also because like I read it myself. Just very proud of myself, honestly, and very, very thoroughly happy to have read this. Such a valuable experience. I think if you have any kind of urge to read this at all, go for it. Like, you can 100% do it. Will it always be enjoyable? No. There are moments of absolute tedium because Tolstoy is that guy who will tell you exactly what is happening. But like, it just provides you with so much stability that at times it's a little bit overwhelming. I read War and Peace. I just can't believe. I think I spent my whole life being like, oh, War and Peace? Pfft, no. But we've done it, and it was amazing. So that's that. That's definitely one of the ones that have absolutely changed my life this year. Also making it into the top 3 favorite books of this year, we have Frankenstein in Baghdad by Ahmed Sadawi. Dear Lord. Thinking about this book absolutely shatters me. It's shattering. This is also so impressive. So in this one, we are following the surreal reality of contemporary Iraq. That's how I found this book for my Around the World challenge. So happy that I picked this one because, oh my goodness gracious. So, how am I gonna say this? In Baghdad, we have this man named Hodi, and he has the goal of basically going around and collecting people's remains, collecting body parts from various explosions that are going off around the city. We're in US occupied Baghdad, and so there's a lot of violence going on. And his goal, collecting all these body parts, is to stitch them together into one full human being so that the government, so that the Americans, so that people can just see that these people who are being taken apart are real people. They're not just this mass of collected body parts. So that is his goal. And it doesn't come to life like Frankenstein's monster. It lays there and he is disgusted with himself. He's like, what have I done? Obviously everything is starting to decay. This is a book that just examines, oh my gosh, so much, but of course it also deals with the nature of the body. It deals with what life is like in US occupied Baghdad, the absolute horror that is going on. We have so many innocent people who are killed. In this book, when your body is taken apart, your soul is left like floating, right? And your soul needs to find your body in order to be with it so that you can move on. But when the soul can't find the body, you are essentially trapped. And we have one such person who dies in an explosion. And his soul is running around being like, where am I? Where is me? Where is my body? And he happens upon this amalgamation of body parts. And he's like, you know what? It's not mine, but it's a body and I need it to move on. My soul needs to be at rest with my body, with a body. And so he inhabits this body and this collection comes to life, and it gets up and it walks into a neighbor's house of this woman named Elishfa. You follow so many people's stories. For example, this woman, just one person in this book, has very much denied the opportunity to move out of Baghdad, which is becoming more and more dangerous for her, but she's staying there because she adamantly believes that her son Daniel, who went missing years and years and years ago, is still alive. And so when this creature, this formation of body parts, comes into her home, she firmly believes that it is her long lost son returned to her. And so this thing, which becomes known as what's its name, starts to represent so many different things. Like I said, you follow so many people in Baghdad, what they're doing, how they relate to what's its name. After it goes missing, after Hodi's creation goes missing, there is a string of murders that starts to sweep through the city. I so appreciative of this book, and also this just reaffirms what books do, what they're supposed to do, how much they can say to you, what they can say to you through the guise of something else, but also how Mary Shelley's Frankenstein is revitalized and here and placed in a different context. It's devastating. And then, because this video hasn't gone on long enough, we still have one more book to talk about, and that is the Iliac Crest by Cristina Rivera Garza. So many of these I picked up because I was looking around the world, and I'm so glad I did that because so many of these have been my favorite of the year. So this one is no different. I absolutely adored this book. This is another one that is an extremely challenging read. I once again need to reread it right now. But essentially what I loved most about this, okay, everything, but like the themes, the different things that are wound into this book. So let me just like kind of give you a brief overview of that. We have the US-Mexican border that is discussed so much. We have disappearance, primarily the disappearance of females along that border, along with the disappearance of female writing, of Mexican female authors, their work disappearing, leading to themselves disappearing, leading to their language disappearing, and then coupled with that disappearance, we have the discussion of when that language disappears, when someone's way of knowing the world and the way that potentially other people relate to it. And in this case, we focus in on one Mexican writer whose writing has been not all but forgotten, but very much, I don't think, celebrated or read as widely as it should be, or should have been, or is, and that is Davila. And so when, for example, Davila's writing starts to go missing, in this case, in this book, like a manuscript is stolen, or it's just erased from history, people are not reading her, not because she's good, not because she's bad, but because she is a woman. And it's just devastating because you see the effects when other women who are reading Davila's work like relate to her, see themselves in her language, find a way of navigating the world through her language. And when that is taken away, in this case, literally in this book, they start to disappear as well, because you are how you describe yourself to yourself. Your world is how you navigate it through your language primarily. And when either words, vocabulary, sentences, the way you conceptualize things in your mind through the language you're using, the way that language is gendered, which of course doesn't pertain so much to English, but because this is translated from Spanish, the translation does try to keep some of that in there, and you can see it so much. It's just absolutely terrifying, because if you think about it, like, the words you know, the way that you think in words, the language that you know is made up of how you're brought up in school, every single experience, every single conversation you have. If you're an avid reader, a lot of it is built up off of the books that you read. A lot of the time you can adopt sentences, you can see a new way of thinking through language. It's not always the language that is the most important, like, epiphany you could have, but the language allows you to have that epiphany of self-discovery, of discovering the world, of discovering something. And when that's taken away, you don't have that anymore. And if all of a sudden all these things are taken away from you, you yourself start to disappear. Okay, so those are like 3 things, but then this book also discusses bodies and the boundary between life and death. There's so many boundaries in this book, and they're completely just taken out. Our protagonist is a person. We are never, ever sure of their gender, and that's something that this author does not let you ever do. If you think that you have an assumption about something because of the way that this person is speaking, because of the way that they're described, something else will come along and absolutely annihilate it. Or just in general, it will never be confirmed for you, right? So you will never know if this person is a man, if they're a woman, whatever. You just cannot tell, and that is something that is denied you as a reader, which is really cool because it starts to reflect back at you what you think. Like, when you're reading them, whatever language is being used tells you what you associate, what gender you associate that language with, or that description with, or that action with. And from that set of identifications that you've made in your mind, you start to realize how much language is used to portray gender, and the ways that it can be manipulated, the ways that it can be turned into this terrible monster, and it's really, really cool. So anyway, this person is alone, and on a dark and stormy night, 2 people knock on their door. One is like an ex-lover, and another one is Amparo Davila herself. Or is she? Like, the famous Mexican writer comes and knocks on their door. Even when I say there in my mind, like, I have an idea, right? And it almost slips out every single time. And so that's still scary. So Davila and their ex-lovers start to communicate in a language all of their own. They kind of team up on them. And one night, they're like, hey, we know your secret. And your secret is that you are, in fact, a woman. And so all of a sudden, you're like, oh, well, our protagonist is clearly a man, right? No. And our protagonist as well works at a hospital. It is like at the end of the absolute world. This huge body of water. I think it's an ocean, which is also a huge part of the book, but they work at a hospital where people literally just go to die. They're not there to get treatment. The staff, the nurses, the doctors treat them like awfully. They abuse them so much because they know they're just there literally to die. And in death as well, like, gender becomes completely erased. These people don't care in life whether they were men or women. They are going to die, and that's not going to matter anymore. Just the absolute tying together of all these things was so impressive. It made me feel so much. At times it's so hard to work with because there's so much ambiguous everything in this book, but wow, like, just mind-blowing, outstanding. There's a lot of also Mexican history that is worked into here as well. I'd love to do so much more research on this, and it was incredible. I also really want to read Davila now, because so much of this book is like a call to reappear these people who have been erased, and one way you can do that is to read them, inherit their language, see through their language, and see through the world into the world. Bring them back into it by seeing with them or through them. Oh my gosh, this was just absolutely devastating. It deals with so much, and yeah, this absolutely changed me this year too, so this had to be on here. I read some phenomenal books this year, like, I'm so happy about that. This year I got through 126 books, and these were the absolute best of the best. I wanted to thank you guys so much, because so many of these were recommendations or just straight out gifts from you guys, which is amazing. Thank you for bringing these books into my life. Thank you for being in my life. Thank you for watching my videos. Just thank you. I love you guys so much. Please let me know what you think, if you're going to pick up any of these, what you want to read in the new year, how are you doing, what have you been up to. Let me know what your favorite memory was, or if there's something you're going through you want to talk about in the comments. Please leave that below, because we're all here for you. It feels so nice to have gone through this list. I love talking about these books, so thank you so much for watching. I hope you enjoyed this. I hope this was a nice companion to your day, or maybe you got some recommendations, or just whatever. I'm so happy right now after talking about all these books. So happy. So I cannot wait to see what I find next year. I love you guys so much, and I will see you in my next video. Ciao!